Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the Opinel, but not this Opinel. We're actually going to be talking about the Opinel 13, which is this gigantic, ridiculous, I don't know why they made this. I'm sure we'll get some really fun and interesting answers from the professionals down in the comments section. Feel free. In fact, let's make a game out of it. You tell me what you think its final purpose is, its ultimate purpose, and yeah, that'll be that'll be a fun one to look through later. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let me tell you something. I'm going to link this knife down below. It's periodically sold out on Amazon, which means people will jack up the price on this thing, and people, for whatever reason, there's a lot of people in the knife world who go, big knife equals big money. Spend big money on big knife. Don't do that. This is not a $250 knife. In fact, I have a hard time believing it's actually worth the original $112 that they wanted for it, right? But the actual original price of this thing is something like $112. I think I see it anywhere from $110 to $130 when it's actually in stock, right? So it's not $250 cool, right? But I guess it's up to you. This one down here, the standard Opinel, this is the flagship one. This is the Opinel number 8. I keep it around solely because it's periodically a good comparison knife, and it's just a really, really inexpensive knife. These are good. I mean, if you really want like a super duper inexpensive, just like normal whatever knife, fine. I've spoken my piece on the Opinel. I think that you can spend $10 to $20 more and get an infinitely better knife. But some people swear by these, so that's fine. Today we're going to be talking about this baseball bat slash knife slash sword thing. Grill tool camp survival machete. Let's go ahead and measure it. Somebody gave this to me, by the way. This was actually donated to me by a viewer as a joke. And I said I will eventually review it. And here we are almost a year later, finally getting to it. The overall length of the Opinel 13 is coming in at about 19.5 inches. Reasonable. 8.75 inches, is that true? No, almost 9 inches, about 8.85 inches blade length. And cutting edge is, boy, it really does come all the way down to here. We have a 9-inch cutting edge. This is a rare example of a knife where the blade, technically the blade length is the same as the cutting edge length, right? But if we're typically measuring from where the handle stops, right? The cutting edge is actually longer than that measurement. How about some size comparisons? I don't know why, but how about it, right? Where is the Rat? There it is. Here it is up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. Here it is up against the Demco 80-20.5. Here it is up against the Spyderco PM2. Here it is up against the Bug Out. The Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, right? I don't know. I'm looking around for other large objects that would make sense to do a size comparison. I mean, it's big, right? This is close to the size of a child's t-ball bat. How's the action on this guy? Well, much like other Opinels, the action is... Actually, you know what? On this guy, the action's reasonable just because the blade is so big, right? It's real drop shutty. So opening this knife is, it's got an interesting, lock. If you're not familiar with Opinels, it has this sort of ring lock where you twist it and it's locked in place, and then you twist it and move it over. And it's a little nerve-wracking because this thing can fall and just like any other knife can, it can fall and land on your finger and cut you. But there's a lot of blade coming down, and this blade is very, very sharp. This is a very tall blade. I mean, it's essentially ground a lot like a kitchen knife. It gets super duper thin, and this is where the twirly mustache folks you know, or like the folks who wear like wicker pants and have like their mustache curls have mustache curls, they get real bent out of shape, right? Those wicker pants start to get real soggy when I start to insinuate that the Opinel is not nearly as legendary as legend might have it. I'm sorry, but I have to. There's just a lot of consistencies with certain knives, you know? So people like the Opinel because the edge geometry is absurdly thin. And as we all know, super duper thin edge geometry is more important than any other element of a knife. Every other element can be completely and totally ignored as long as the edge geometry is very, very thin. If you shave wax paper or do like surgical maneuvers on a grape for a living, then obviously you're going to want an Opinel. All jokes aside, this is one of those things that makes the Opinel so famous, besides the fact that it is very, very inexpensive, right? I would argue that there are other elements that are important, even when you're just doing day-to-day stuff. But this knife does share that attribute. It certainly is incredibly thin behind the edge, and it will absolutely cut. If I were to play Fruit Ninja in real life, this is actually what I would want to use. I think a katana would be a stupid thing to use for Fruit Ninja. If somebody were throwing fruit at me and they were like, you know, slice as many pieces of fruit as you can or we'll burn your house down, then I'd be like, oh God, give me the Opinel 13. That's perfect. I'm so ready to slice flying fruit, right? Honestly, I think the best use for this is cutting a certain type of fruit, and we'll talk about that later. But it does have that crazy edge geometry, that very slicey edge geometry. So watch your fingers is what I'm saying. The action is what it is. Carry profile, I mean, I don't know. This is something that I wouldn't, like, I don't know that you're going to put it in your pocket. It's probably just going to lay out. I mean, it's got, you know, it's really thick, right? I mean, how is it up against the Spyderco Pair 3? Well, it's a big, freaking oversized cork of a handle, right? Beechwood. It's pretty heavy, right? It's not going to carry in your pocket well, and it doesn't have a pocket clip. Which is another problem with the Opinel in general is that when you put it in your pocket, it sort of lays like this, which is very awkward and uncomfortable, right? But, you know, if a lot of the people carrying those things are wearing wicker pants, which are already uncomfortable, so I suppose having the Opinel in your pocket, right? These guys like write with quills, and just listen, I know I'm riling people up. They got their quill in their left pocket, and they got their Opinel in their right pocket, and they got their crunchy pants, right? They were already uncomfortable before they put the Opinel in there, so I'm sure that they're fine. But for regular people wearing regular pants, God, that's a mean thing to say. This is going to be an awkward thing in the pocket, and this one will be substantially worse for obvious reasons because it is huge. Really great for playing like tiny, like mini baseball, right? Probably not, actually. You don't want to be swinging something that's got a blade in it. The handle itself, though, if you could remove the blade from it, would be a perfect tiny baseball bat for like living room, you know, living room baseball, I guess. Let's go ahead and weigh it. How much does it weigh? I bet it weighs a lot because it is mostly wood and some metal. Yep. It weighs 14.5 ounces. We probably could have seen that coming. Let's measure blade stock thickness. Oh, wait, let's do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools. My tools are I'm kidding. You can't take this apart, right? I mean, maybe you can, but not, not going to be something you're going to be disassembling, right? Which is another problem because, listen, here's the thing. When these get wet, when Opinels get wet, whoever's trying to justify whatever for an Opinel, as soon as it's wet, it's basically garbage, right? And yeah, there are some circumstances where you can salvage it, right? And it'll dry out or this or that. But wood, especially this type of wood and moisture and the way that the pivot is in the Opinel and the fact that you can't disassemble it, you get too much moisture in there and it's, you know, the whole thing's just poo-poo town at that point, right? Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness, one of the better elements here. Let's see. Blade stock thickness is coming in at 125 thousandths. Thicker than I thought, but super duper thin considering how long the blade is. Okay, meat and potatoes time. Whoops. Hold on. Sorry for the long intermission there. I had to open the knife. So these are made in France. The blade steel is 14C28N. They've used a lot of different steels. They've used like the carbone, something that's like a high carbon composition. They have a different one that's a stainless composition. I'm not sure that the composition or the steel really matters all that much, but this is 12C27, which is a Sandvik steel. We see it in a lot of Kershaw's. It's a decent steel. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know how well it's going to do on a blade like this because truthfully, I don't know ideally what this is for. I have to assume, right, 10 minutes in, I think people are going to think that maybe I missed the joke. No, I have to assume that this is more or less just a funny joke, but it actually is functional enough, right? Like if you needed a makeshift, like if you like, oh darn it, I forgot the machete, right? Gosh darn it. On your family trip to wherever, right? And you gotta hack down some brush because we're about 45 minutes out from the nearest rest stop. We got to hack down some brush so that we can relieve ourselves, right? Gosh darn it, I forgot the machete. Well, we got the trusty, Opinel 13 in this weird circumstance. Well, sure, it'll work for that. I think it'll work just fine. I don't think that the edge geometry or the blade geometry is one that is ideal for use as a machete. I think it's too thin. I think this is a time where thin geometry doesn't work as well. There's a reason that not all machetes are quite as thin, even though machetes generally are pretty darn thin. I don't know that they're this thin, right? Maybe though, I think it'll work okay. I wouldn't go, excuse me. Sometimes I get so excited that I spit all over things. I don't think that, you should be chopping down any trees with this thing. But as a general like camp tool thing, I have to admit it is really fun to like two-hand this thing. There's not too many knives I can say because I'm not going to call this a pocket knife, but it is a folding knife. Folding machete thing, camp tool. It is fun to hold it like this. I don't know that when you would actually two-hand it. I think maybe light chopping or maybe some food prep, right? I think like carving a watermelon at a barbecue. I think this is about ideal, right? That is like my or like I always joke about like if you regularly chop pineapples in half, right? And it's usually a joke. In this case, it's not a joke, right? If you're cutting large fruit, I think this would work the best, right? And obviously, you are going to need a lanyard for that because you do not want to be accidentally hucking this thing across the barbecue, especially if you're not the one hosting the barbecue, right? If you're just like the weird guy down the street who brought this, hey, you guys got any pineapples? I got a thing to cut them. You don't want to be the guy who accidentally lets this thing fly, at the barbecue. So be careful about that. Outside of its enormous size, it is otherwise exactly the same as any other Opinel, right? It's just a lot less boring because it's huge. I mean, this is, if this will work, this will do it. People are gonna just ferociously be like, oh, the Opinel is so useful and it's economic, it's such a good value. I don't care, it's boring. This one is only interesting to me because it is gigantic and ridiculous. These are made well enough though. I mean, truthfully, what's interesting is that this actually does lock out completely and totally solid. I don't know if you beat on this thing for a while, I don't know if it's actually gonna, come apart. The edge is actually pretty even. And honestly, the finish on the blade is pretty good. Overall, like the overall fit and finish of this knife is actually fairly impressive. It's not going to stay perfectly centered. In fact, I think there's something a little bit wonky going on down here. I think maybe the tip is like kind of bent. Yeah. The tip is a little bit bent. These are not necessarily, and I think maybe it was straight, and then like the curvature of the, is this wedged on both sides? No, it's actually not. That's incorrect. This is not bent. it has a swedge on one side. And maybe, I don't know, maybe at the very end it is actually a little bit bent. But you can see here we only have a swedge on this side, which is giving us that kind of awkward. I was going to say that it was centered, and I'm not sure that it's that simple, right? But, okay. It does have a nail nick if you have a problem getting it out, which you're not going to because it's kind of loosey-goosey down here. I think that the knife is actually running into the wood, right? Which is something that happens with Opinels in general, right? I mean, the wood just stops the blade. Okay, that's fine. Really, I don't know that there's a whole lot more that I can say here. This is a big, crazy object. I think that in almost every situation that would call for a larger folding knife, there is something out there that is better suited and less expensive than the Opinel 13. Now, when it comes to the little one, I think these things make great junk drawer knives, right? Or just like knives that you might keep in your toolbox, like just something, it's almost a disposable knife, right? And at that point, I'd almost just suggest like, well, then, just get a utility knife, right? And the people who have been carrying and using these things, they won't make it this far in the video to hear me actually give justification for this, right? They're just going to leave their angry comments and leave, right? They're not going to stick around. These are fine. I think they come in at like 10 or 12 bucks, maybe even less. Maybe these are like $9, these little ones here. And they're fine for essentially disposable knives, right? A box cutter will do the same thing. This has a little bit longer of a blade, right? Obviously, you're going to have to resharpen this blade. You're not going to be able to just pop it out and replace it. I find that knives that cost $10 to $20 more than the Opinel just bring so much more to the table that I will prefer them just every single time, right? It's almost like the opposite situation. This is substantially more convenient and more capable in more circumstances, right? But I would, in essentially every scenario, rather spend more money and get just a better, an easier to manipulate knife, a knife that it doesn't die the moment that it gets like 10 feet from water, like this, and this is just big and ridiculous, and nobody needs it. But it is funny. It's almost funny enough that, I've made a couple of reels out of this thing, made a couple of shorts. It's just one of those funny things that people see, and for some reason people immediately are like, oh, that's really cool. I want to find a reason to own it. Okay, I'll invent this weird role where I like justify. You don't have to do that. If you think this is cool and you want to spend, I wouldn't recommend buying one when they're not in stock because people jack them up, right? But if you can find one in stock for the original $115 or so, right? Here's what I think is totally fine. You're like, I don't care if it's useless. I just think it's cool. I just want to buy it, then go for it, right? And if you want a disposable, whatever knife that doesn't really matter if it, here's the thing. Like, yeah, will water kill this thing immediately, right? Well, yeah, essentially. But also, you'd be out $8 or $9 or however much it costs, right? So knock yourself out. There's no reason, like, you can't. You can enjoy whatever you want. You can tell I have no idea how to review this. I have absolutely no idea how to review this. I'm doing this because I promised to review it, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it into a video. But there you go, right? And I had to dunk on the Opinel the whole time anyway. Maybe if we complain enough together, he'll stop talking crap on the Opinel. No, as long as I know that people are bothered by it, I'll probably keep doing it. But that's gonna be pretty much it for me today. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex if you enjoyed this video. Leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.